Welcome back to Finnish Gear Reviews. This is the Finnish Defence Forces recap, and this one is going to be a pretty packed update. We have new F-35 weapon news, NATO ground forces officially starting activity in Finland, more support for Ukraine, new drone defense units, changes to Conscript rules, increased funding for the border guard, new cooperation with Estonia on military AI, and a very busy month for Patria and the Finnish defense industry. So let's get into it. The biggest headline this month is that Finland is continuing to build out the weapons package for the future F-35 fleet. Defense Minister Antti Häkkänen has authorized the Defense Forces to procure GBU-53 small diameter bomb to glide bombs from the United States for Finland's F-35 fighters. These are precision air-to-ground weapons. And the important part here is that they give the F-35 a more flexible strike capability, including against moving targets and in difficult weather conditions. The Ministry of Defence says this purchase complements the earlier F-35 weapons package and supports the broader use of the F-35 as part of Finland's defence system. This matters because the F-35 is not just a fighter replacement. It is becoming a central part of Finland's long-range detection, targeting and strike capability. Every new weapon integration makes the aircraft more useful in different scenarios, and this one adds another precision option to the toolbox. Staying with air power, the Defence Forces are also ordering military aviation services from Finavia for 2026. This agreement covers things like airport fees, airport maintenance, and air traffic control services. The value for 2026 is 15.3 million euros, excluding VAT, and with option years for 27 and 28, the total package is worth 48.8 million euros. On the surface, this sounds less exciting than a new aircraft or missile purchase, but it is actually really important. Finland's military aviation depends on functioning airports and air traffic services across the country. The agreement is also meant to make sure services are available not only for the Finnish Defence Forces, but also NATO and allied aircraft when needed. That is another sign of how Finland's defence infrastructure is being adapted to the NATO era. And that brings us to one of the biggest NATO-related updates. NATO's Forward Land Forces in Finland officially began activity on June 6th. This is part of NATO's presence in the north and Finland's integration into the alliance's defense posture. For Finland, this is a major shift. Before joining NATO, Finland's defense planning was built almost entirely around national defense. Now, Finland is still responsible for defending itself, but that defense is increasingly linked with allied forces, allied logistics, allied training, and allied command structures. The United States also remained very visible in Finnish defense cooperation this month. The US Secretary of the Army visited Finland with discussions focused on defense cooperation, security in the northern region, and support for Ukraine. Finland is also deepening NATO logistics cooperation. The defense forces are joining the Multinational Logistics Coordination Center, or MLCC. That may not sound flashy, but logistics is one of the most important parts of actual defense capability. Moving troops, ammunition, vehicles, fuel, and spare parts across borders is not something that you can just be improvised during a crisis. For Finland, joining this kind of logistics coordination structures help support both national defense and NATO operations in the region. Another important international update is Finland's continued support for Ukraine. Finland is giving an additional 40 million euros for the Pure initiative, which supports Ukraine by helping fund military equipment from the United States. Finland and Ukraine also signed a document on defense material cooperation. That is important because cooperation with Ukraine is not only about donations. Ukraine has gained enormous real-world experience from the war, especially in drones, electronic warfare, battlefield innovation, and fast adaptation. For Finland, cooperation with Ukraine can help strengthen both Finnish defense planning and the domestic defense industry. And speaking of Ukraine's battlefield lessons, one of the clearest themes this month is drones. The Finnish Defence Forces are preparing to establish dedicated drone defense units. Ruotuväki reported that the defense forces are closely following the lesson of the war in Ukraine and that drone defense is becoming a bigger part of Finnish air defense training. The new units will focus specifically on countering more advanced drone threats with a wider range of tools. The article also made an important point. Not every drone should be countered with the most expensive system available. Cheap drones create a cost problem. If you use very expensive missiles against very cheap drones, the attacker can win economically even when the drone is destroyed. Because of that, Finland is looking at a layered approach, using both older and newer systems where they make sense. The defense forces are increasing training around systems that may still be useful against drone threats while also developing new units and methods. This is one of the areas where the war in Ukraine has probably changed military thinking the most. Drones are no longer a niche capability. They are part of everyday modern warfare, and every army now has to think seriously about how to detect them, jam them, shoot them down, and protect troops against them. The Border Guard is also getting more funding for drone defense. Ruotuväki reported that the Border Guard will receive 44 million euros in additional funding for counter-drone systems. That's especially relevant for Finland because of the long border with Russia and the need to protect critical infrastructure, border areas, and key facilities. Drone defense is no longer just a battlefield issue. It's also a homeland security issue. Another future-focused story is Finland and Estonia starting cooperation on military artificial intelligence development together with European AI company Nest AI. The agreement is a letter of intent, so it does not include financial commitments, but it creates a framework for sharing expertise, joint development, training, and technical cooperation. The cooperation will initially focus on adaptive AI, decision support tools, and autonomous and unmanned systems. The goal is to build systems that are compatible with allied countries and not locked to one single vendor. This is a very interesting development because it shows that Finland is not only buying traditional weapons systems, it is also trying to build the digital and AI side of future defense. Command systems, unmanned systems, logistics, intelligence processing, and targeting support are all areas where AI could become increasingly important. Now let's move to domestic security and legislation. The Ministry of Defence made 14 negative decisions on property purchases by buyers from outside the EU and EEA. The properties were located in several municipalities, including Asikkala, Imatra, Rautijärvi, and Rovaniemi. The applicants included citizens or companies connected to China, Ukraine, Turkey, and India. The ministry said the decisions were based on national security, defense, or security of supply concerns. This is part of a broader Finnish trend. Finland is paying much closer attention to who owns land and property near sensitive locations. It does not mean that every foreign buyer is suspicious, but it does mean that property ownership is not clearly seen as part of national security. There is also a planned reform of intelligence legislation. Defense Minister Häkkänen said the goal is to strengthen national defense and national security by updating Finland's intelligence laws. This fits into the same bigger picture. Finland is trying to close gaps in security, improve authorities' ability to detect threats, and adapt laws to a changed security environment. Voluntary national defense is also being strengthened. The Ministry of Defence announced that voluntary defense work will be reinforced. This is an important part of Finland's model because national defense is not only about active duty soldiers. It also depends on reservists, voluntary training, organizations, and the broader willingness of society to participate in defense. With Finland increasing its defense spending and expanding capabilities, the reserve and voluntary defense sector will likely become even more important. There was also a big conscript-related update. Starting in July, men in the Finnish Defence Forces will be allowed to have long hair under the same type of rules that already apply to women, so congratulations. Long hair cannot be worn loose, but male conscripts no longer need to cut their hair short just to begin service. The Defence Forces said the change is connected to equality, comfort in service, and modernizing the general service regulations. At the same time, the Defence Forces made clear that the update does not mean abandoning military discipline or tradition. The same update also clarifies rules about inappropriate behavior, harassment, bullying, and hazing. This is not a combat capability story, but it is still relevant. Finland needs motivated conscripts and reservists, and the Defence Forces are clearly trying to modernize service culture while keeping the military structure intact. Now let's move to the Finnish defense industry, because Patria had a very busy month. Patria and Kovo Armor signed a memorandum of understanding connected to Lithuania's planned procurement of Patria 6x6 vehicles. This continues the growth of the Patria 6x6 program in Europe. Patria and Slovakia also updated their agreement on Patria AMV XP 8x8 vehicles, strengthening cooperation around that platform. Patria completed deliveries of AMV XP 8x8 ambulance vehicles to Slovakia as well, showing that it is not just about combat vehicles but also support and medical variants. Patria also announced that it is expanding cooperation with Valmet Automotive in the production of armored vehicles. That is important because demand for armored vehicles in Europe has increased sharply, and industrial capacity is becoming a strategic issue. It's not enough to design good vehicles. Countries also need the ability to build them, maintain them, upgrade, and scale production when demand rises. Finland and Sweden also agreed on cooperation in the procurement and development of Arctic tracked vehicles. Patria's planned Track X vehicle is connected to this broader push. That makes sense for both countries. Finland and Sweden operate in demanding northern conditions, and tracked vehicles are still essential in snow, forest, wetlands, and Arctic terrain. Patria also launched a new passive counter-battery radar called Patria Whisper at Eurosatory in Paris. The key word here is passive. A passive system does not emit in the same way traditional radar does, which can make it harder to detect. Counter-battery systems are used to help locate enemy artillery activity, and Ukraine has shown how important that kind of capability is. Patria and Renk also presented a next-generation unmanned ground vehicle concept at Eurosatory 26. This points to another major trend. Unmanned systems are not only in the air. Ground robotics are also becoming more important for logistics, recon, casualty evacuation, and high-risk tasks. Senop, which is part of the Patria group, also introduced a new multi-weapon smart sight compatible with the Nammo M72 shoulder-fired systems. Overall, the message from Patria this month is clear. Finnish defense industry is growing internationally, especially in armored vehicles, sensors, unmanned systems, and soldier-level technology. That connects with another important statistics from the Ministry of Defence. Finnish defence material exports grew by 241% in 2025. That's a huge increase, and it reflects the security environment in Europe. Countries are rearming, replacing donated equipment, strengthening domestic defense industries, and looking for reliable suppliers. For Finland, this creates both opportunity and responsibility. A stronger defense industry supports national readiness, but it also ties Finland more closely into European and NATO defense supply chain. There was also an update on the May 2025 Hornet accident investigation. The investigation into the accident has now been completed. These reports are always important because aviation safety depends on learning from every incident, especially as Finland prepares for the transition from Hornets to F-35s. Finally, Ruotuväki also covered changes in naval warfare through the Narrow Waters exercise, with the message that the Navy is facing major changes. That fits with everything else in this recap. Drones, sensors, electronic warfare, long-range weapons, and unmanned systems are changing not only land warfare, but also operations at sea. So if we step back and look at the whole month, there are a few clear themes. First, Finland is continuing to build the F-35 into a complete capability, not just buying aircraft. Second, NATO integration is becoming more concrete, with allied forces, logistics, aviation services, and US cooperation all becoming part of everyday defense planning. Third, Ukraine continues to shape Finnish defense thinking, especially in drones, air defense, artillery, and defense industry cooperation. Fourth, Finland is tightening national security at home, whether that means property ownership, intelligence legislation, or counter-drone systems. And fifth, Finnish defense industry is becoming more important internationally, especially through Patria's vehicle programs, new sensors, and unmanned systems. And that is it for this Finnish Defence Forces recap. Let me know in the comments which story you think is the most important this month: the F-35 weapons, NATO land forces in Finland, the new drone defense units, or Patria's growing international role. And as always, if you enjoy Finnish military and defense content, consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.